let's gather in. It's going to be because it's loud in here. So my name's Mary Ann. Feel free to take pictures. Yep.
Come right up here,
Step. There we go.
Get right up here.
All right, so welcome to Sebago Brewing Company. We're going to be 20 years old this year.
Really?
Yep.
Good.
So our
Not even old enough to drink yet.
nope. So our first brew pub was in 1998, and it was in the parking lot of the main mall. And they had a system like this system here. So behind you or right here, on the right we have a mash tun and a lauter tun, and on the left we have a kettle and a whirlpool. So that the size of that system is 5 barrels. So a barrel of beer is 31 gallons. And so brewers talk in terms of barrels. So these right here, these are 160 barrels. So they hold almost 5,000 gallons of beer once they're full. So they opened their first brew pub. They had a 10-barrel system. And that was in 1998. Then they opened a second brew pub in 2000, and that was in downtown Portland. And that had a smaller system than that. That had a 3-barrel system. And then the third one they opened was the Gorham one at the Gorham station. And that location wasn't big enough to put a brewery in, so they built a cold room and they put serving tanks in it. And that tank right there, closest to us, that's a serving tank. So what they would do, they would brew the beer in South Portland, then they have a truck with a 6-barrel tank on the back of it, and they pump the beer into the truck, they drive it to this restaurant, then they fill the serving tanks, and then they carbonate that beer at the restaurant. And to do that, you need a brewery license. And so that's how you can be called a brew pub, even though you're not starting your beer there, you're finishing it or conditioning it there in Gorham. So that went along for a few years. Around 2005, they were doing so well, they couldn't make enough beer for their restaurants. And that's when they opened their...
They couldn't make enough beer.
So that's when they opened their first brewery, and that was in the Gorham Industrial Park. And they had a system like this, the 2-vessel system, but it was a 20-barrel system. So they went along like that until now, and here we are. And up there, where you can see that tank to the left, that's a 40-barrel tank. So that's double what we did before. And that we just opened here March 1st. So now we have a 4-barrel, 40-vessel system. So we'll brew 4 times in one day, so we can fill up one of these fermenters here.
Well, that's good for me. I don't know what you guys are going to have.
So to make beer, you need 4 ingredients. You're going to need barley malt, yeast, water, and something else. Hops. Yep, so you got it. So this is some barley malt. It's caramel malt. You can pass it around. You can smell it. It's kind of like grape nuts maybe, or oat cereal.
Barley malt.
Barley malt. Yep. And this is the same thing. This is also barley malt. It's just been roasted longer. So it smells more like chocolate or roasted coffee. You can also take a bite of that. And so what they do is they're going to harvest the seeds, and then they're going to put them in a room full of humidity till those seeds sprout. When that seed sprouts, the enzymes start activating the sugars and breaking them down because it wants to grow a plant. So it's trying to get that energy to grow the plant. So then what the maltster does, they take those seeds and they put them in an oven to dry them and stop that growing action. And so the darker ones just in the oven longer. And so when you have different beers have different colors, like your stouts are dark, they're going to use more of those chocolate malts. So this is hops. So hops grows on a vine, and it has little flowers all down the vine. They look like little tiny pine cones. And they're full of oils. And that's where the flavor comes from, the oils that are in those pine cones, those flowers. So what they do is they take the flowers off the vine, and then they crush them and push them all together. And that's how you make those pellets. And so it's just the oils that are holding those together. There's nothing else added to it. So you just want to take, looks like rabbit pellets, exactly. Yes, yes.
Don't give it to the rabbit.
So to make your beer, so to make your beer, you're going to take your barley malt, you're going to put it through a mill and crack it so it opens up. And then you're going to put it in your mash tun. So they're going to take the seeds, so they're going to take the barley malt, you're going to crack that open in the mill. Then you're going to put that in your mash tun, and you're going to add hot water, about 174 degrees. Then you're going to take this paddle and you're just going to mix it up till it's like oatmeal. And it's going to be in there for 60 to 80 minutes. After that, you're done with that. That water is now full of all that, it's sugary water now because your grain's all broken up. And so it's called wort. The water's called wort. And you're going to drain it down through here. On the bottom of here, there's a screen at the bottom, and that's called the lauter tun. And that's going to catch all that spent grain. And then we're going to shovel that out, and we're going to give it to North Star Farms in Windham, and that's a sheep farm. So all our spent grain gets used by that farm. So now your wort, you're going to move it over here to your kettle. You can tell your kettle if it has a steam pipe that goes outside. So you're going to bring this to a rolling boil. And then you're going to add your hops. So that's when you put the hops in. And you're going to boil that hops. And the hops needs that temperature, that boiling temperature, to dissolve those oils all the way out. And that's where you get your beer flavor or your bittering flavor. A lot of beers you're going to keep boiling it for an hour. After an hour, you're going to add some more hops. You're going to keep boiling it. After 75 minutes, you're going to add some more hops. Keep it boiling, and at 90 minutes, you're going to add more hops.
And then the Easter Bunny comes out. Yeah.
So the later additions of the hops is more for the aroma or the bouquet of the beer. And they don't get as bitter because they're not in there as long to boil. So sometimes people say they taste like mango or grapefruit, passion fruit, smells like clean-cut grass. So that's all from the later additions to the hops. So then you get it where you want it to be, and now you got to cool it down as fast as you can because you don't want any bacteria to gather on that liquid. So you're going to cool it down. You're going to take some of that hot wort out, one of these pipes, and you're going to force it back in here at a higher pressure at the bottom, and it's going to create a natural whirlpool in there. And it's just like if you're mixing your teacup, the solids are going to fall to the center, and that's what's going to happen here. All the hops are going to fall to the center that haven't dissolved, and you're going to drain that hot wort out the side. And then it's going to go through this piece right here. This is a heat exchanger. So you're going to has cold water going through one pipe and your hot wort going through another, and you're going to cool it down to about 55 degrees. And then you're going to attach a hose like that hose to here, and it's lined with stainless steel, and you're going to pump it all the way over here to one of these fermenters. So let's everybody watch their steps. Now you have your hot wort in that hose, and it's going to go to one of these small fermenters, the ones 13 or 14. So you can tell a fermenter because they all have cone-shaped bottoms. So you got your wort in here now, and this is where you add your yeast. So you pitch your yeast into the top of this. The first thing the yeast is going to do, it's going to eat all the oxygen in that tank. As it eats the oxygen, it multiplies. It'll double in size. Once all the oxygen is gone, then it's going to start eating those sugars that are in that wort that we made available for it. As it eats the sugars, it creates carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol. So the carbon dioxide is going to be forced out that pipe at the top, and that pipe's going to be connected to a hose that goes into a bucket. And we'll look over when we get around the back, but you'll be able to see the carbon dioxide bubbling out through the water. So you're going to leave that in there until you reach a certain alcohol level. So every beer has a different alcohol level that you're looking for. We make a Saddleback beer. It's 3.9% alcohol. That's one of the lower ones. From start to finish, that takes 6 to 8 days. Our Fries Leap, which has a 6% alcohol, that's going to take 14 to 16 days. So once you reach that level of alcohol that you want, you're going to cool that down again. So right now we're at 40. Now we're going to go down to like 40 degrees. And as you cool it, your yeast is going to go to sleep and fall out of solution. So that's why all these are pointy, because the yeast falls to the bottom. And we're going to harvest that yeast, and we'll use that yeast up to 8 more times. So now your beer's ready to go, and you can do several things to it. One, you can put it in barrels, like these barrels here. That's what they're doing right there. They're taking what's called, it's wheat wine, which is a type of beer, out of that fermenter and putting it in these barrels. So they'll put it in the barrel, they're going to add a little more yeast to it and a little sugar so that it keeps fermenting in the barrel, and then we'll put it in the barrel aging room for at least 9 months. So the other thing to do, so if we're making a big batch of beer, so if your beer's up there in the 161, then we're either going to keg that or we're going to can it. So once that beer is ready, we're going to move down and then we'll show you the next step. So watch your step, it's a little wet here. This little tank here that says yeast on it, when we harvest the yeast, that's where we can keep it. It keeps it at a constant temperature. There's paddles inside. They move every 5 minutes. And so when you add new yeast to the old yeast, it mixes it up and it keeps it homogeneous. From the big tanks, once you're ready to brew that, you're going to run it through this contraption right here. So that is a centrifuge. And it's just like in a hospital where it spins, the centrifuge spins around and it separates things. So that's going to separate any leftover yeast or hops or anything that makes your beer cloudy. It's going to spin it. It's going to go 6,800 RPMs. Going to create a G-force of 11,000 Gs and just throws little tiny particles to the side. And all you're doing is clarifying your beer, making it not turbid or able to see through. If you're making a stout or a really dark beer, you skip that step. So from there, it's going to go to one of these flat bottom tanks. So all those over here are flat bottoms, and they're called bright tanks or conditioning tanks. Once your beer gets into those tanks, it's cooled down to 34 to 38 degrees, and you force carbonate it. So you take a pipe that has microscopic holes on the end, you put it into the conditioning tank, and then you put CO2 gas in it, carbon dioxide. And it's like a fish bubbler or like an aquarium. So this is a special room they built for us for barrel aging. And so these are beers that we had from our old brewery that we moved over here. So that is River Drive Cooperage, yep. So that is from the place in Buxton. And some of these are Slick Nick beer. Some of these are Lake Trout Stout. So they are beers that we use in the winter, like around Thanksgiving and Christmas. We release those. So we made them last year, and we put them in the barrels when we made them so that we could release them this year. So this year when we make the new beer, we'll do the same thing, and this will be available on tap only. We won't can it or bottle it. You'll only be able to get it at the restaurants or the pubs. But so this room is kept at a constant temperature, which is a little higher than what you would regularly keep like canned beer or kegged beer at, so that it can keep fermenting and being active in the keg. So these are the cans before you put beer in them. Then they have this little lip on the side, and then these are the lids. Yep. So then that just will fit on the top like that. So here we are at the canning line. So you're gonna, yep, those are all empty up there. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna fill that blue thing with cans. So it's gonna be 1 pallet of cans, like that stack over there. It's 8,169 cans. So you're gonna put them in that blue space. You're gonna raise them up. They come out the top on the conveyor belt. And they come down here one at a time. And then where these needles are, right where Kara's standing, those needles are gonna, those needles right there are gonna fill the can with carbon dioxide. And then where those tubes are, so the carbon dioxide's heavier than air. You don't want any air canned in your beer. So then the tubes are gonna fill it with beer. And then that stack there, that's all these lids. So then that lid's gonna come down on that can. And then right here, where the can is spinning, can you see where the can's spinning there? So there's 2 wheels on either side, and the wheel's gonna crimp this down. And that's how it gets sealed. And so there's one on each side. It can do 80 cans a minute. Then it comes through, and this is just washing it off with cold water, just fresh water, so they're not sticky. Then they come through here, and this is just a dryer. So that's just blowing air onto the can to get all the water off.
They were worried that was beer on the ground, and it's a good thing you don't have a dog.
There is some beer, but most of it's water.
Yep.
It's where that can is there washing it off.
Do you know, is this type of canning standard in the industry? Yeah, pretty much.
During the year, besides we always make Fry's Leap and we always can it, we always make Runabout Red and can it. The other beers switch out. On the Whistle Punk we make twice a year, and we change that over with the hop swap. So we'll do Whistle Punk, then hop swap, then Whistle Punk, then hop swap. Fry's Leap, like I said, this is our flagship beer. This is what we do year round. And Simmer Down, that is our summer session ale, and that's a lower IPA. Yeah, that's the one they're canning right now, exactly. So that gentleman who walked through, he was one of the owners. His name was Tim Haynes. There are 3 owners in Sebago Brewing Company. Kai Adams, Tim Haynes, and Brad Monarch. Kai went to college in Colorado to study geology in the early 90s. He got a job at a brew pub while he was in school, working out back, learned how to make beer, cleaning kegs. And while he was in college, he got very ill. He got Hodgkin's disease, and he had to come home to Maine to recuperate. And he did get well, and he decided that he was not going back to school to study geology, but he was going to open a brew pub. So what he did was he got a job at Geary's. They were well known at that time, so he was just packaging, cleaning kegs, worked there a couple of years, and then he moved up to Camden, Maine, where he got a job at Sea Dog Brewing Company, and that was their headquarters at the time. He worked there until he actually became the head brewer. At that point, he said, I have recipes, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to run a restaurant. So he left that job and he came back south, and he got a job at Chili's at the main mall as a busboy. Started as a busboy, became a host, eventually became a server and a bartender, and that's where he met Tim Haynes and Brad Monarch. Tim was the front of the house manager at the time, bartender, and Brad worked in the kitchen. Brad was the kitchen manager. He has a degree in hotel restaurant management, and he had opened a couple of breakfast restaurants and sold them. So they formed a partnership. They had the tools that they needed between the 3 of them, wrote a small business loan, got that approved, and raised the other 50% to open their first brew pub through private investment, and paid those people back within 5 years. And that is the story of Sebago Brewing Company. And they're still the 3 owners. Now we have 5 restaurants, including this tasting room. and just this one brewery. We brew only Monday through Friday. The brewers come in usually around 5:30 or 6. The packaging usually come in around 7. Everybody's usually done by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Here we have our silo. It holds 50,000 pounds of grain.
Wow.
So we brew now in 40 barrel batches in the bigger system, and each brew uses about 2,000 pounds of grain. So that base malt there comes from Wisconsin. It's American 2-row barley malt with 10% Munich mixed in. It's the exact same base malt, base grain that Allagash uses. So that grain comes in by train to Vermont, and then it is trucked to Portland. Like I said, we're turning 20, so this Saturday we're having a big party out here. We're gonna have a couple bands. They're gonna be on that platform there. There's gonna be some tents, barbecue, wood-fired pizza, games. So yep, so they're celebrating big their 20th anniversary. So this property that we're on, it's 6 acres that we've leased for 100 years. The rest of this whole property is owned by Shaw Brothers, and they bought it from Eco Maine. Eco Maine sold it with the stipulation that only agricultural businesses could be on this property. So beer is an agricultural product, so that's how we were able to get our lease. Mostly this property is going to be hiking trails and biking trails, cross-country skiing. Up in that corner, the Gorham Snowmobile Trail comes out, so there'll be snowmobile parking here. And yes, you are right, we have planted here, but very small. We've planted 3 acres of barley malt and right back there, and we're also going to grow about 3 acres of hops. So in 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to make an estate beer from things that we've grown here, but it will be a very small batch. It's nothing that'll be canned. It'll only be available in the pubs. So this is the milling. Oh. I know. All right, so this is the milling or grain room. So this pipe here, so this is where the grain's going to come in from that silo, and it's going to go into this mill. And there's rollers at the top at the bottom, and they're going to crack those grains open. And then they're going to put them in this, they're going to send it over to the grist case. So every beer that you make uses 3, 4, 5 different types of grain. Most of it's going to be the base malt out of the silo. These are super sacks of grain. They're 1,000 pounds. So that first one that we tasted, that's the caramel malt, that's in here. And the second one that we looked at, the chocolate malt, that's in that other bag. So our Fried Sleep IPA, for instance, you're going to use about 1,800 pounds of the grain from outside. You're going to use about 150 pounds of this grain. You're going to use very small, maybe 10, 15 pounds of the dark chocolate malt. They're going to go down through these hoppers, through the mill, and into the grist case. In every single batch of beer that we make, it doesn't matter what kind it is, we're going to use 100 pounds of Maine Malt House malt. And that is grown in Mapleton, Maine by the Buck Brothers. And that'll go into that hopper there and down through. And so then once that whole recipe's in the grist case, it's going to go up through that pipe. You can see the grain in that little window there. And it's going to be pulled up through that pipe over to the mash tun. So these things here are they're on load cells. They're super sensitive. So if you just want to push on this, son, go ahead and push on that down. And you guys watch that. Yep, just put your finger in there and push on down. Yep. Look at that go.
So strong.
So strong.
You just looked at 1,000 pounds.
So up there, that's our new system up there. And you can see that steam pipe. So that's the kettle for the new system. So it's 40 barrel system. So it's 1,200 gallons of beer at a time. And that pipe that comes down there, that's where the grain comes down through. And that goes into the mash tun. And then you cook that up. And then you push it through to the thing on the other side. And then these 3 tanks right here, you can see that one says caustic. That's a clean in place system. So they can program the system to go ahead and clean that mash tun. Then they can grind some more grain and start the new brew right away. So it's much more efficient. Do we have any questions?
Awesome.
Oh, yay.
Yay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right.
All right.